In the name of God, it's This Week in Jihad. I am Robert Spencer, and he is here, ladies and gentlemen. He could, he should, he's David Wood. Ladies and gentlemen, the world's premier Christian apologist on Islam, David Wood. Welcome, David.
Uh, how much of your week did you spend thinking that one up, Robert?
About 5.5 days.
Nice.
Does it show? What do you think?
Yep, yep.
Do
Uh-huh.
I need a new one for next week? Okay.
No, you're good. You're good. No, stick with that one. Stick with that one.
Okay. Anyway, got a lot of jihad here, ladies and gentlemen. As always, some of the same old stuff. I mean, that is the mind-numbing aspect of this. I have been tracking jihad for 20 years now on a daily basis, and I can tell you that there's just mind-numbing similarity. David, I'm sure you can also attest to this, that there's so many stories. I mean, we've done it here. You know, what did they say, David? Allahu Akbar. Where did they strike them, David? On the neck. And it's all you have to do is just change the name, change the place, and it's all the same. But this week, a little bit different takes on a lot of the same kind of thing. So why don't we start with the kinetic jihad, the actual violent jihad attacks, of which there were unfortunately quite a few this week. And we'll go to Mozambique. I'd like to spend some time in Mozambique. The sunny sky is aqua blue. But in Mozambique, over the past week, aside from the couples dancing cheek to cheek, there was jihad activity. And Mozambique's president, Felipe Jacinto Nyusi, he confirmed that in the Nampula province, 6 people were beheaded and 3 others were abducted. Now, interestingly, he said that the jihadis had been trying to recruit people in Nampula province and were unsuccessful. And he said, therefore, they are very nervous. And he ascribed these beheadings to their nervousness. What on earth do you think that he could possibly mean by this, David?
I have no idea because, I mean, I'm totally detached from reality.
Yeah, I do think he's totally detached from reality. And that's really the lesson here, that this is yet another dumb infidel. Felipe Jacinto Nyusi, president of Mozambique, despite the illustriousness of his position, he does not demonstrate any keen awareness of what he is dealing with in jihad. I think the jihadis are anything but nervous. They believe that they are fulfilling the commands of their deity, and consequently, they feel serene, really, not nervous at all. All right, shall
And
we? Yes, sir.
what would there be to be nervous about? I mean, you have an ideology with 1.6 billion adherents that commands its followers to violently subjugate the entire world whenever possible. What could go wrong?
Well, that's that. You say what could go wrong. That's actually a very good point, because what you have is the foolproof win-win situation that has made jihad so formidable all through the 14 centuries of its existence. You have, if you win, you can take the property and the women of the warriors that you kill. And if you lose, you get the heavenly virgins. So in either case, you have the victory of the pleasures of the flesh. And so this created, unfortunately, quite a formidable fighting force throughout
And
history.
we just want to be clear. That is not something that jihadis invented. That was the promise from Muhammad, and that was when he really started getting tons of followers. I mean, he preached for over a decade in Mecca and didn't win a whole lot of followers. These weren't exactly Billy Graham crusades with thousands of people coming forward. It's when the message of Islam became, "Hey, join me," and there are only 2 possibilities: we you survive and we split the spoils, or you get killed and you go get your virgins in paradise. So either we beat these guys and we take their women and daughters for ourselves, or you die and you go to paradise, and there you get your virgins, and you get your I'm not making this up. This is in the Muslim sources. You get your miraculously powered erections. Allah gives you these eternal erections, and then you start having sex with your virgins. But then at night, when the virgin, at night while you go to sleep, after you've deflowered the virgin, Allah restores her virginity. So once you cycle through all your virgins, and you want to go back through the cycle again, then Allah has restored their virginity for you. He's restored their hymens. So the promise is you literally get to spend eternity deflowering virgins with a penis that never goes limp. It's
It
like,
just it's so absurd, David. We've been here before, but I just don't see how anybody could think that's the highest longing of the human soul, to just have sex all the time.
and what's amazing is it shows you what kind of followers Muhammad was winning. But then when there are people that doesn't appeal to, then Islam's just about submission to God and so on. Then the message changes. But that, ladies and gentlemen, that was Muhammad's main selling point.
Yes.
Eternity deflowering virgins if you just join me.
And this is very important to note, to contrast with Christianity and other religions as well. You have, for example, Charles de Foucault, who was a French bon vivant who had a conversion and went to live in the desert in North Africa trying to convert Muslims, but they killed him instead. And he wrote about how he had realized that when he was first studying Islam that it could not possibly be true, because he had experienced the pleasures of the flesh. And while he appreciated them, he knew that they did not satisfy the soul ultimately in its longing for God, and that consequently he was looking for something else. Little shift here, David. I did want to ask, I'm curious about this question that's in the comments. I have my own answer, but since it's addressed to you, what do you think? Do you see
What's
it
the question?
there? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you saw it there. Honest question. David, have you ever met a reasonable Muslim who speaks with logic and reason?
Um, I mean, that's. I'm thinking because everyone has a degree of irrationality and so on, and so there's a spectrum. But yeah, you find Muslims who are much more logical than other Muslims. But insofar as they become more logical, they're usually diverging more and more from Islam and sort of inventing their own religion that they're just calling Islam. So you could have a religion and think that it's Islam, and it really is just about submission to the one creator of the universe and so on. But you have to do so much gymnastics to get to that if you have a position, if you have sort of a theology that is rational and logical, you're not going to be able to say that it's really Islam without being irrational, right? You're going to have to be doing some insane gymnastics to get to that. So Islam just doesn't really allow that.
Yeah, I can say in, wow, 40 years now of interacting with Muslims in all kinds of circumstances, when it comes to Islam and to trying to have a rational discussion about the accuracy of what is asserted historically, the veracity of the Quran, various other things, I have never in 40 years, a Muslim who was a pious believer who was willing to engage intellectually and to actually consider the difficulties in the Islamic presentation. I mean, for example, I remember way back in college in like 1982 or so, there was a Muslim guy I used to frequently talk to and have lunch with, and he was trying to convert me, and I was trying to convert him. and he said, the Christians corrupted your scriptures. And I said, well, chapter 10, verse 94 of the Quran says, if you're in doubt concerning that which we've revealed to you, then consult those who had the scriptures before you, which indicates that the uncorrupted scriptures must have existed at the time of the revelation of the Quran. So where'd they all go? But I could not get him to face that very simple point or to consider it rationally.
Yeah, and that's really one of the issues that doesn't allow any sort of coherent position, right? You can't have a coherent position because there are only two possibilities here. There are two possibilities. Either we have the inspired, preserved, authoritative Word of God, or we don't. If we have the inspired, preserved, if Christians have the inspired, preserved, authoritative Word of God, if we have that, then Islam is false because Islam contradicts our scriptures. So if we have the inspired Word of God, Islam is false. The alternative is if we don't have the inspired, preserved, authoritative Word of God, Islam is false because Islam affirms the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of our book. And so there's no way out of it. Either Islam is false or it's false. That's the dilemma, ladies and gentlemen. It's false or it's false. Those are the two possibilities. And so in order to not have to face that dilemma, they just make something up about the Bible being corrupted, and not realizing that, hey, if your God and your prophet affirmed the inspiration and the preservation and the authority of our scriptures, and you say, well, it's been corrupted, you're not even a Muslim, right? You're no longer a Muslim. You may not be responsible because you don't know it, but if you actually read what the Quran says about the scriptures of the Jews and Christians, and you say it's been corrupted, you're not a Muslim.
Yep, because the Christians won't be rightly guided till they follow the gospel. How can you do that if it's been corrupted?
Can't do that. Oh, by the way, funny thing is that you mentioned Surah 10, verse 94, and that was addressed specifically to Muhammad, right? This is Allah speaking to Muhammad, saying, if you doubt the revelations we've given to you, ask those who read the book before you, ask the people of the book. And that's a perfect example. So one, Muhammad's having doubts, and Allah tells him what to do about his doubts. Go to the people of the book, go to Jews and Christians to make sure that your revelations line up with their revelations. If our revelations have been corrupted, how are his revelations going to line up with ours unless his revelations themselves are a corruption of the truth? And so this is just what happened. And this is what happens when your fake prophet doesn't know what's in the scriptures, and then he affirms scriptures that contradict his own on fundamental issues. There's no rational position that can be held there.
David, you're just being too rational here.
Pagan philosophy, am I right?
Yep, that's right. That's it, man. So, in response to Christian arguments of this kind, will you stop spamming the comments, please? In response to Christian arguments of this kind, there is nothing to do but to get violent. And so we have in Uganda a story of Christian preachers, who were preaching on a boat to a group of 10 Muslims. And one of them began to threaten the Christians, saying, if you continue insisting that Jesus is the Son of God, then Allah will kill all of you. And they kept on preaching. And the Muslim guy said, we are giving you one last minute to stop your blasphemy and to convert by confessing the Shahada, or else your lives are at risk. Well, they killed 5 of the Christians.
Yeah, and isn't that interesting? Because as you know, according to the Quran, it's not, if you're killing them, it's not you killing them. It's Allah who's killing them through you. And so, that threat, hey, if you keep doing this, Allah's going to kill. It's not Allah's going to strike you down. It's we're going to kill you, and then
Yes.
it's Allah doing it through us.
Well, see, this is a very important point, David. An extraordinarily important point that most people miss. When Muslims say Allah is going to kill you, they mean Muslims are going to kill you. And nobody knows that in the West. I remember years ago, The FBI, I was talking to this FBI agent about threats that I had received. And they said, oh, don't worry. We went into their chat room and they were just saying, Allah is going to kill this guy. And I said, you don't understand. The Quran says, chapter 9, verse 14 and 15, fight them and Allah will punish them through your hands. And if Allah will punish them through your hands, then the Muslims are the executors of the wrath of Allah. And so when they say Allah should kill you, they mean some Muslims should come kill you and be Allah punishing them through your hand, through punishing you through their hands. So this is something I think a lot of Western authorities don't realize, to their own detriment.
And it's not like the jihadis aren't clear enough on this point.
They're crystal clear on this point.
Should make a video where a jihadi is like shouting in some CIA agent's face exactly what he's doing, and the CIA agent's going, la, 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 can't hear you, la, 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 la.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much like, that's what they do. That is the situation. CIA, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, State Department, they can't hear when the jihadis tell them exactly what they're all about. Anyway, a very insistent individual in the comments talking about a story we have queued up here, so we will skip right to it. In Libya, a gentleman has been sentenced to death for apostasy, for leaving Islam. Now, the thing is that Libya doesn't have a law against apostasy, at least not officially. But the problem is, in all too many Muslim countries, there's a kind of a cultural hangover of Sharia. So even if the official laws do not talk about apostasy, the Sharia is taken for granted as superseding the official laws. And so if Muhammad said, if a Muslim changes his religion, kill him, then you're going to get people doing that, and you're going to get states sentencing people to death, even though the laws of the land say something about freedom of conscience or whatever.
Now, wait a minute, Robert. I thought Libya was one of those places, like all those other places, where as soon as we get rid of the evil dictator, then democracy and peace were going to flourish.
Yeah.
I thought, because you had Saddam Hussein. Just get rid of him, then everything will be perfect and wonderful, and you'll have wonderful democracy in Iraq. And just get rid of Assad, then everything will be great there, and get rid of Gaddafi, and everything will be fine there. It's funny, we have that mindset in the West because that's what worked here, right? Hey, get rid of that tyrant King George, and then we'll have democracy and everything will be great. And it's built into our minds because Islam isn't the problem, and because everyone's just average people are these, peaceful, democracy-loving, Western-loving people. And so what's wrong in the Middle East? We have all these horrible dictators who are the problem. So just do what worked for us, get rid of the dictator, and then peace and democracy and love for the West, and we'll all embrace, and the hearts of the jihadis will melt, and then in every case we get rid of the evil dictator, and it's a bloodbath. It's just an endless bloodbath, and it's like there are a bunch of wolves, right? There are a bunch of wolves waiting to devour everyone. And the evil dictator is the one that the wolves are scared of. And we go and we get rid of the evil dictator, and, then the wolves just take over.
Oh, yeah. And so in this case, Ahmed Dia, who is a convert from Islam to Christianity, he was required to publish his sentence of death. This was part of the sentence, that he has to post it at his residence, which is just sort of an invitation for vigilantes to kill him, even if he is not executed. And this is all, once again, not according to the law of Libya. It's just Sharia. So a lot of people, it's important to note, say, well, Islamic law may say these things, but most Islamic states don't enforce it. Well, this case should remind us of the status of Islamic law, even in states that officially don't have it on the books.
One quick comment here because I hear this all the time. Senior Bob says the founders hated democracy. They knew it always devolves into the tyranny of the majority. You're talking about a pure democracy. If you're voting, it's still a democracy, right? We vote here. We vote here. Yes, you have other things because they did want to avoid all kinds of tyranny. Yeah, it's not a pure democracy. It's still a democracy. You're voting. So you can call it a constitutional republic. You can say we've got a constitution and we got the system of checks and balances and so on. This is a form of democracy, not a pure democracy.
This is true. Say, David, do you remember Ali Muhammad Brown?
Name sounds familiar. Who was that?
Ali Muhammad Brown was the Muslim from Washington State who went on a jihad killing spree in 2014.
You're not narrowing it down. You're not narrowing it down enough because that's like.
Okay, he shot a guy walking home from a convenience store. He shot two young men that he met on a gay social networking app. And then he went to New Jersey and he shot a guy at a red light. And so he is up for 3 murders. And he was given an additional 93-year sentence. He already has a life sentence, but he was given an additional 93-year sentence. I think these things are pointless virtue signaling and a waste of the taxpayer money, really. I mean, the guy's already got a life sentence without parole, and you're going to give him, what is his skeleton going to be in the jail, in the prison cell for another 93 years? It's silly. But anyway, that's why he's in the news this week. And so he said, and I thought this was a very telling quote, David, I decided to do those things because I was misguided by Islamic Jihad. That's what Ali Muhammad Brown said. And I thought, misguided, now see, that's probably he means that he got Islam wrong and it's peaceful. Because that's what they always say when they're trying to get clemency from the court. And the court doesn't know anything and often falls for it. But he said it in such a way that he was misguided by Islamic Jihad. I thought, well, yeah, that's right, he was.
Darn right. Yeah, and it's a weird situation because since Islam allows deception, right? Since Islam allows that, since Islam allows people to smile in our faces while cursing us in their hearts and so on, it's a weird situation where a person who says, hey, I was misguided and I renounce jihad, well, that person could have actually figured something out that makes him realize that was a stupid, bad thing to do. But at the same time, he can follow his religion and lie and say, oh, yeah, I figured out that was all wrong. And in other words, either way, he'll say the exact same thing. So him saying it tells you absolutely nothing about whether he has really renounced jihad or not.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing we've seen over and over again. If a CARE spokesman is saying Islam is peaceful and tolerant, well, in a context where Muslims make up about 1% of the population, he's supposed to say that, even if he wants to violently subjugate the entire world and slaughter all of us. So he may really believe that Islam is peaceful and tolerant, in which case he'll say that, or he may not believe it and he actually wants to kill us. And so that's the point. These guys saying something, if you have a religion that promotes deception in exactly these contexts, then the words of the person tell you nothing about what the person actually believes. So he may believe it, may not. You'd have to look at the track record to try and get an idea of what the person really believes. And groups like CARE, they don't have the best track record with this stuff.
This is true, but Westerners, I have learned through bitter experience that if you say somebody is lying, then you look bad. The person who is lying does not look bad. But most people will think, oh, look at that. That guy is such a jerk. He's accusing this guy of lying. They would sooner believe Ali Muhammad Brown and CARE than somebody who has the poor taste as to point out that they are being deceptive. It's just it's a strange fact of human nature in the West. Anyway,
isn't it funny though that Islam puts us in those situations where if you know anything about the religion and it allows deception, And then when you see a group like CARE and you're like, something's off with these particular guys here, something's off here, and you bring it up, then you're the bad guy.
Oh
And
yeah.
so it's if you if you know what Islam teaches and you dare to point it out, you're the bad guy. And so they can just keep doing the same thing over and over again. They could just, they could just keep lying, and then
And they do.
they're okay. They're okay, and you're the bad guy.
That's the story of the last 20 years of my life, David. And many other people as well. This is not about me. It's just the way they operate. They lie. People don't realize they're lying and don't want to believe they're lying. They smear the people who tell the truth about them, and so on. But anyway, let's go on to Germany, where we have more violent jihad, unfortunately, in a pizzeria in Germany. A Somali Muslim migrant, Abi R, attacked an Iraqi Yazidi refugee, Naif A. And so you have in Germany now an ancient hatred that has been playing out in Iraq with the persecution and genocide of the Islamic State, ISIS, against the Yazidis. You have now this same thing going on in Germany. But what's interesting is that he attacked the Yazidi. He chased him with a knife, ultimately killed him in a pizzeria, and he explained ingenuously, he insulted my religion. He had to die.
We've heard that quite a bit in recent months, haven't we?
Yeah, I think there's a real run on that sort of thing going on right now. The jihadis are emboldened by the stabbing of Rushdie, and they think they want to take out some other high-profile critics of Islam, as well as anybody, excuse me, anybody who is perceived as insulting Islam at this point.
Yeah, and you and I have discussed it that whenever someone is successful and viewed as a hero for something he's done, you get these this wave of copycats right afterwards. And so the guy who stabbed Salman Rushdie recently, now it's just gonna be the in thing to do once again for a while.
Yes, quite so. And so we have also some of the random attacks. As always, in Germany, a Muslim from Afghanistan. What do you think he was yelling, David?
Great Karnak says, Allahu Akbar.
Your streak continues.
I'm like 408. I'm like 487 and 0 right now.
Yeah, I thought
no one's ever been this right.
That's true. I thought he was going to be yelling, "I love my dog," but no.
No, this MAGA country.
That's right. He didn't yell that either. All right, we got. He yelled Allahu Akbar. He stabbed two random people near the train station in Ansbach. We should note that the Islamic State has frequently called for random attacks on citizens in Europe, in particular.
Robert.
Yes, sir.
Quick question from the relevant question from the chat that I was wondering here. Someone said, "Has there been an update on Rushdie?" I haven't seen anything since the initial. He was saying he was in the hospital and he got stabbed in the eye or something like that. And I haven't seen anything, but I don't know if I just missed it.
No, I don't think so. I would have seen it because I don't do anything else all day but track this. And since they said that he is likely to lose an eye, has extensive nerve damage in his arm, and other damage to his liver, I believe it was, that's all that I've heard. But that was actually right after the attack. There have been no updates to my knowledge. May have missed it, but I don't think there have been any updates since then. Still in Germany, we have a couple arguing in their apartment, and the man took out an axe and began hitting the woman with the axe, killed her in the Friedrichsfelde district of Lichtenberg on Lohenberger Straße. Yeah? And
Ja,
yeah.
du hast recht.
Yeah, yeah. And anyway, uh, he is yet another Muslim migrant, and so here again we have the phenomenon that we've discussed many times, that the Quran and Islam don't say you can kill a disobedient woman, but when you can beat one, sometimes it's hard to know where to draw the line.
And I mean, we've also pointed this out before. If she's diverged so far that you can put her in the apostate category, then you could. Point is, you can justify just about anything
Mm-hmm.
involving violence against someone who's upsetting you in Islam. And this kind of ties in. You're talking about the person being an immigrant. This ties into what we were talking about before. Since Islam allows deception, someone's applying for refugee status or just immigration or something like this. If that person really just wants to get out of a horrible country and live a good normal life and work and so on, then he'll say that. But if he's actually violent and misogynistic, or even if he's a total jihadi, he's going to say the exact same thing. In other words, they're all going to say what you want them to say. What you want them to hear, that's what they're going to tell you, regardless of whether they really believe it or not. So, strange situation this puts us in.
Indeed. Oh, here's another one, actually in a similar vein, where the infidels will not understand what exactly is going on here. When I posted this, I got a lot of negative feedback from people saying this has nothing to do with jihad, this has nothing to do with Islam, and it's about a polio vaccination team being attacked in Pakistan and 4 people killed. And I noted that there have been many Muslim clerics, and notably in Pakistan and Nigeria, who have said that vaccinations for polio are a Western conspiracy to sterilize Muslim children. And consequently, they kill the polio vaccine workers. And so I thought, well, that means it's jihad.
Pretty rough.
Indeed.
Guys, do you know how bad polio is, ladies and gentlemen? It's pretty bad.
Indeed. Okay, shifting gears, we'll go to Egypt. And in Egypt, there's been a very interesting story, terrible story, really. A 4-year-old boy named Shenouda. And this was last week's comment spam, but we didn't get to it then. This happened a bit ago, that he was abandoned at a church in Egypt. Apparently, his mother left him in the church. And so he was adopted by a childless Christian couple who were members of the church. And everything's been fine since then. However, it recently came to light that the child has been taken away from the couple and placed in an orphanage. Because in Egypt, according to Egyptian law, no child can be anything but Muslim. That is, I mean, unless you have a child that's born in a Christian family. And so any unidentified child is a Muslim, which of course is likely to be based on a statement of Muhammad, is it not, David?
Yep, everyone's born Muslim until the parents make it a Christian or a Jew.
That's it. And so the child has been taken away from this couple who loved the child, and they have put Shenouda in an orphanage and changed his name, since Shenouda is an identified Coptic Christian name. They couldn't keep calling him that. And so there have been efforts to get him back, but the Christians just don't have equality of rights.
And an additional sad part here. I don't know what the laws are about Egypt when it comes to adoption, because not all countries stick to what Muhammad actually said. But Muhammad outlawed adoption So
Yes.
you can take care of an orphan. You can take care of an orphan, but you don't adopt the orphan into your family so that he becomes part of your family. And so looks like you had Christians who were willing to adopt, but no, he's got to be a Muslim, and so take him to the orphanage, and we could take care of him, but he will never be part of someone's family, according to Islam.
Indeed. And
And
so
and
that
by the way, that was all to justify Muhammad taking the wife of his own adopted son.
indeed. Anyway, we'll go from there to the dumb infidels, that we have rapacious Islamic authorities, and then on the other hand, we have dumb infidels. And so here's a terrible story out of Germany. We have Michael Sturzenberger, yeah? And Michael Sturzenberger is great hero, critic of Islam. And he was sentenced to 6 months in prison for essentially for criticizing Islam, for solely because he spoke about Islam in a way that has been identified, of course, as hate speech, which is an entirely subjective category that has no standing other than the powerful deciding to silence the powerless and use this moniker. So Sturzenberger is, in all seriousness, in very serious trouble because, of course, in all the countries of Europe, there's this huge majority of Muslims in the prison. And so he's at very great personal risk.
Yeah, it's like when Tommy Robinson was locked up.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah, it is I mean, as much as things suck here in the U.S. I mean, you look at
And
Europe.
they do.
Yeah, they do. But you look at Europe and you're like, gosh, better you guys than us.
Yes.
Who was it? Who was that? Who was that a few years back? The woman Sabbatich Wolf or whatever.
Yeah,
something.
Elizabeth Sabbatich Wolf in Austria. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was tried for calling Muhammad a pedophile or something like that, right?
Yes, that's right. And not only was she tried for it, she was convicted, and on appeal, the conviction was upheld, and it was all in a private conversation. It wasn't even the topic of her discussion. But somebody took her aside during a break in her presentation and asked her what she thought about Muhammad and Aisha. So it was a total setup, you see.
And it's just insane because, colloquially, when we talk about someone being a pedophile, I mean someone who's, sexually attracted to children or something like that. So Muhammad definitely was. And so he fits that definition. But even according to the DSM-5, that's the standard work in psychology, I read their section on pedophilic disorder. And if you are attracted to a child, a prepubescent child, and then you have what's called pedophilic disorder, assuming you're not also a child. But yeah, if you are more than 5 years older than the person, in fact, they said I think younger than 13 years old. So Aisha's definitely fits that description. And so you would have pedophilic disorder, and then there's the qualifier where it's, are you exclusively attracted to children, or are you attracted to children and adults and so on. And then there are other qualifiers like, is it incestuous and things like that. But according to the DSM-5, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual for Mental Disorders, Muhammad has pedophilic disorder. Mm-hmm. And so you say the guy's a pedophile. You're absolutely correct according to the standard work in diagnosing mental disorders, and they'll charge you with a crime for saying it.
David,
that's insane.
When you were looking through the DSM-5, did you find jihad?
No, it should be. It should be, according to what we hear, right? Because all these jihadis keep getting this same sudden jihad syndrome.
Mm-hmm. All the time we hear about these guys screaming Allahu Akbar and striking the necks, and we hear they're mentally ill. So there ought to be a big category in there for jihad activity, but somehow there isn't. In more dumb infidels news, we have Byrne Elementary School in Burnsville, Minnesota. And Byrne in Burnsville is offering hijabs for sale in the school store to elementary school students. David, can you explain to our viewing audience what that means, what the implications of that really are?
Well, in the Quran, you're told if you want to avoid being molested, you put on you wear the hijab to avoid being molested. And since this is applying in Muslim societies, it's saying that Muslim men are going to molest you if you do not dress appropriately. And then, and apparently the school board has decided that it's okay to, or the school at least has decided that they can encourage that with little kids.
Yep, exactly. The Byrne Elementary School, with its hijab that it's offering, it's got the Byrne Elementary School logo on it. It's very nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it's school spirit hijab, you see. But they're saying that these girls are sexual objects, that they are legitimate objects of desire unless they have to protect themselves from being molested in accord with the Quran. Of course, the Byrne Elementary School administrators who thought this would be a grand idea to offer these hijabs for sale, they don't have a clue. They don't know anything about what they're doing, but that is indeed what they are signaling.
No, and it's probably some Muslim organization going to them saying, "Hey, you know what would be really tolerant and would make us feel that you really, really love us? Start having all the girls in school wearing hijabs there." And if you were to reverse the situation or something like that and say, "Hey, we're gonna have little Muslim girls go around wearing crosses," suddenly they wouldn't be terribly in favor of this new approach, because
Yes.
tolerance for some strange reason only goes in one direction.
Indeed. And there's a very great concern for the separation of religion and state when it comes to Christianity, but the hijab somehow has become secular. So it's okay. Let's just go back to Germany, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will examine this demonstration in Cologne. And there was a rally held on September 10th in the center of Cologne for two women who were lesbians who were sentenced to death in the Islamic Republic of Iran. I don't remember now. Did we speak about that last week? I'm not sure if we did or not. But in any case, two lesbians were sentenced to death in Iran, and there was a demonstration for their human rights in Germany, in Cologne. And you can see the video. The Muslims showed up and they are very loudly screaming. What do you think they're loudly screaming, David?
I got to go with my gut on this one. Allahu Akbar.
475 in a row or whatever it was. They were indeed screaming Allahu Akbar, and they drowned out the pro-human rights demonstrators. And I thought there is a little bit of a hint of what Germany has in store for its future. Because the people who blandly think that they're going to continue with their secular human rights arrangement in society is they're in for a big surprise, because it's not going to last. And there's a growing number of people in Germany who believe that it is their responsibility before Allah to destroy that secular pluralism and replace it with Islam. Not all Germans speak like Bavarians, yeah? We have this in the comments. It's very important. Not all, yeah. Not all Germans speak this way, yeah?
Yeah, I used to get in trouble in German class because I'd always speak with some ridiculous German accent. Möchtest du ins Kino gehen? Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same thing. The professor was always saying, "Stop speaking that machine gun Deutsch." And I said, "What do you mean? Hogan's Heroes." Okay.
That's what my teacher said. She said, "This isn't Hogan's Heroes."
I see nothing.
But it was funny because I wasn't doing Hogan's Heroes. I was doing like they had the characters Hans and Franz on Saturday Night Live. What's really terrible about the situation in Germany, because you're saying this is only gonna get worse and worse and worse. It's getting worse because all they do is back down, right? All they do is back down. It doesn't need to get worse. If people would stand their ground on some basic freedoms and so on, and not put up with the nonsense that jihadis of various stripes are implementing, then you wouldn't have this problem. I mean, it's very simple. Hey, you want to come into this country? We're going to lay down some ground rules, and you're going to adhere to these ground rules. We're going to send you back wherever you came from. That's it. But so learn these rules. Do you agree to these rules? If you agree to them, if we find out you're lying, boom, you're gone. And they won't do that. It's you guys demand whatever you want, call for the death of anyone you want, and scream Allahu Akbar and shout down everything here, and you're fine because tolerance.
Exactly. And so they have no clue what they have done to their societies, but ultimately it will be impossible for them to avoid. Actually, I have the lesbian activists in Iran story queued up here in my women's section. So that is indeed what they were demonstrating about in Germany. Zahra Siddiqui Hamadani and Elham Chubdar were handed death sentence in the Revolutionary Court. That is the Islamic Revolutionary Court. Have you ever noticed, David, how the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the most formidable military arm of the Islamic Republic of Iran, is very frequently in the Western press called the Revolutionary Guards Corps without the Islamic, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, so they can keep the IRGC acronym. But many news sites avoid calling it what they actually call themselves, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. And in this case, there's a story from the UK's Daily Mail, and of course we don't want to upset our friends in Berlin. In Tehran. Yes, great.
You said Berlin.
yes, of course. Well, we're all friends now.
Yeah, but Berlin is now the Tehran of Germany.
Yes, exactly. So they call it the Revolutionary Court, but it's the Islamic Revolutionary Court. And what's interesting to note, David, is that they were charged with spreading corruption on earth. Where does that come from?
That's very interesting because that's sort of 5 verse 33 of the Quran, which is this really, really terrifying catch-all, which says that, if you make war against Allah and his messenger, then the punishment is murder or crucifixion or chopping off hands, or depending on the translation, prison or exile. And this comes right after the verse that all our politicians love to quote, sort of 5:32, where that's where we hear that if anyone kills a man, it's as if he's killed all mankind. They have to chop off what the rest of that verse says, because even that verse allows killing for spreading mischief or causing corruption, depending on the translation. But notice it's if you cause corruption in the land, then there are all these punishments, including crucifixion and dismemberment, and it's this vague crime, corruption in the land. What in the world is that? You go to Muslim commentators, Ibn Kathir says it even includes unbelief. Just not believing correctly, then you could be punished according to Surah 5 verse 33. We point that out when Western politicians and journalists tell us, the Quran says if anyone kills a man, it's as if he's killed all mankind. And they always draw the conclusion, therefore, anyone who's killing in the name of Islam is violating the Quran. They're not real Muslims. When the very next verse literally commands them to kill people who spread corruption in the land, commit that vague crime, which you can accuse anyone of that, right? Anyone you don't like, you can say, hey, you're spreading corruption in the land, now you have to die.
That's it. It's a catch-all that the Islamic Republic of Iran uses in exactly that way. And what's interesting also, David, is that Zahra Siddiqui Hamadani and Elham Chubdar, they were also accused of communication with anti-Islamic Republic media channels and this is the kicker, promoting Christianity. Now, these are two lesbians. They were not promoting Christianity. But it's an interesting example of how Islamic entities generally tend to conflate everything that's happening in the West and the United States with Christianity. Now, this, of course, is Germany, but that's the same thing as well. The West, the United States, Europe, it's all Christianity. I actually even debated a guy last year who he was trying to say that Christianity was more violent than Islam, and he spent half the debate talking about how American foreign policy was violent. Well, okay, but that has nothing to do with Christianity. But he would not accept that. And that's a very common Islamic assumption. In India, we have this is not a dumb infidel story. This is a war is deceit story. Who said war is deceit, David?
Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, I almost called you Muhammad. It's terrible. I'm getting old.
First Berlin is in Iran.
It's bad. Yeah. Pretty soon you'll have to get somebody else in here. Anyway, he said that he was a Hindu, called himself Shiva in India, and he went into a Hindu temple. But once he was in there, he began to trash the place because he was not a Hindu. He was a Muslim named Tawfiq Ahmed. And he damaged an idol, damaged a religious flag before he was stopped. Now, this is in full accord with Islamic law, is it not, David?
Yep. And we saw Muhammad allowing his followers to do this if they needed to go, even if they needed to go kill someone.
Yes. And that was that was one of the permissions that he gave to Maslama, one of his followers, that he could lie to him and deceive him in order to get close enough to him to kill him. Because Ka'b ibn al-Ashraf, the targeted person, had insulted Muhammad.
War is deceit.
Indeed. So, back over to Indonesia, we have the Communion of Churches in Indonesia. And they are upset because there was a group that was building a church in Cilegon City, in Indonesia's province of Banten. And they were busy building the church when an Islamic group that called itself the Committee of Local Wisdom Savior. The Committee of Local Wisdom Savior. I'm not quite sure how that makes any sense, but they staged a protest demanding the denial of permission to build the church, whereupon the government indeed revoked permission to build the church. Now, why do you think that they did this? This Committee of Local Wisdom Savior?
I would guess because under Sharia, Christians aren't supposed to be building churches or even repairing ones that are damaged.
But wait, David, Indonesia is not a Sharia state.
Yeah, one of life's great mysteries.
Yes. Aceh, one province in Indonesia, is indeed under Sharia, but not the rest of it, at least not officially. But here again, we see what we were talking about earlier about Libya, that these things take place despite the secular laws that are on the books. The Sharia trumps everything. And so Islamic law forbids the building of new churches, then new churches will not be built. Okay, let's see. Here is an interesting story out of Somalia. 18 people killed as Muslims attacked trucks filled with relief food in Hishabelle State in central Somalia. These trucks were transporting food to Mahas town from Baladweyne City, and they were set upon by Al-Shabaab, the Jihad group. 18 people killed. Now, why on earth would jihadis want to destroy relief and food that was going to help people?
Well, if it's helping their enemies, this is something that happens over and over again with with ISIS and in Syria and all over the place. They want people to have. They want the only alternatives to be either we rule according to Sharia, or nothing but pain and death and chaos. Because they know if people have the choice between Sharia and something better, which is almost anything, they'll choose almost anything over Sharia. But if the only options are, chaos and starvation, then people might submit to it. And so that's those are the options that they want to leave people with.
Exactly. Also, remember the Quran says that the Jews and Christians will never be satisfied with you unless you forsake Islam and convert to their religion. So the charity, food relief, things like that, they're considered to be enticements to people to leave Islam. And thus they have to be not only rejected but attacked. I have a question here, a little bit of a tangent, but I did want to answer this. This is Mehreen Mufti asking, Robert, sir, please make a book on breaking of Hindu temple and continuous suffering. Ghazwa-e-Hind, book of Sita Rem Goel, freely available in archive, can help you. Mehreen Mufti, I am happy to tell you that book has been written. I have written it. It exists already. It is called The History of Jihad. And it is a history of the jihad against India. I used Sita Rem Goel as a source. And also the jihad against Europe, the jihad against everywhere else. It is the only comprehensive history of jihad available today. The history of jihad from Muhammad to ISIS. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot about India there. I mean, you cover the entire history there, and most of that was new information to me, and I've been dealing with jihad for a long time now.
Well, that's the thing, David, as you pointed out at the time that the book came out, that most people who deal with Islam on both sides, both the Islamic apologists and people who argue and criticize jihad violence and Sharia oppression and so on, they talk about the Quran and they talk about Muhammad. But that's it. Generally, there's no discussion or knowledge of what happened after Muhammad all the way up to the present day. There's this huge gap between the death of Muhammad in 632, or maybe the time of the rightly guided caliphs, and 9/11. So this book fills that in.
And when you leave out that 13 centuries in between, what it does is you get the impression that Muhammad called for jihad and his followers did it, and then eventually things settled down, and then now in the 20th and 21st centuries, some countries got upset and they started doing jihad again. And like there's not this middle section, what filling in all the those middle 13 centuries, so you have the entire 14th century history of jihad. It shows you how absolutely relentless it's been. Whenever Islam can advance through jihad, it's advanced through jihad, going for 14 centuries now.
And I would point out that Islamic apologists have no response to this. They are totally unprepared for criticism of Islamic history. And evidence of that is, do you remember that guy Asadullah Ali, I think his name was? Asadullah,
Yep.
anyway. And he made a couple of videos. I watched a bit of the first and I thought, oh, that's silly. So I stopped watching them because the guy was saying that Muhammad didn't mean terror when he said, I've been made victorious through terror. He meant fear of God. And I thought, well, Muhammad's whole career, setting Kinana on fire to get the treasury out of him and raping Sophia right there on the battlefield, and the whole deal is terror. And so it's hard to sustain that argument. But I knew when he made the first video criticizing the first chapter about the Quran and Muhammad, in the first couple of chapters, that he would stop before he got to all the Islamic history. And sure enough, he did. They have no way to deal with that, because what are they going to say? They can't say it didn't happen, and they can't say that it wasn't based on Islamic teaching. So this is a very vulnerable point for Islamic apologists.
And little side note, Asadullah Ali, he's the one who had a famous clip. I think he tried to take it down once he realized we were going to start using it, but then we had it anyway. But he's the one who was speaking to a mosque and telling them about the problem. He said he's personally, just in going around speaking, he's personally met hundreds of young Muslims who no longer believe in Islam, but they're living as Muslims. He said they're teaching. They're teaching. They're quoting the Quran. Some of them have the Quran memorized. They're in madrasas and so on, and they don't believe. They're just terrified of announcing it. So they're coming to him saying, "Hey, I don't really believe any of this. What do I do? Because I'm terrified," and so on. And he's not saying there are hundreds. He's saying he's personally met hundreds. So I mean, if this guy is not even terribly popular, has met hundreds of Muslims who are living as Muslims but actually don't believe any of it. How many are actually out there? And this is why, right? Because people are starting to wake up to the idea that their Muslim apologists and their dawagandists are spouting complete nonsense, and that's on you. That's on you, dawagandists.
Exciting times, David.
Oh, greatest time in history.
Yes, indeed.
As terrible as everything is in the world, with all the stupid nonsense we have to put up with, if you want to see Muslims leaving Islam, there is no greater time to be in all of history. And that's why you could say, David, where do you want to be in history? Right here.
Yep, this is it, man. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the conclusion of another thrilling episode of This Week in Jihad. We'll be back next week, I think. I might be on the road, but we'll be back soon with more jihad, unfortunately, because it just keeps coming. Thank you for watching, and God bless.